Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott Telford.
Josh, my friend, another month, another leak for GTA 6. Now this one you need to obviously take with another big pinch of salt, a big sort of mound, Tony Montana-sized mountain of salt. But it seems quite promising and it'll be everywhere across the interweb, so we might as well talk about it. This is a new image, a top-down image of what looks like GTA 6's map, to the point where it's in so much detail that it seems to be convincing a lot of people that it isn't just fan-made, simply because of the amount of resources you would need to bring together to be able to create it in the first place. Over on GTAforums.com, there is a user called Arthur Bell who's put a hell of a lot of time in to comparing it, to sort of legitimizing it and trying to vet it and make sure that it does seem legitimate. And they were, one of their things that they've done is compare it to a satellite image, a top-down satellite image of Miami, being that the leaked image seems to purport to be Miami Vice City, and say that, look, they're not taking from this real-world image. It looks like it is legitimate simply because of the amount of detail that's there. Now, this originally leaked, the original leaked images, there was some back in 2018, but they were a hell of a lot more cartoonish. They leaked on 4chan. A lot of fans just went, yeah, whatever, we see them all the time, as we do, and it didn't really go anywhere. This new leaked image, the shape of it, the topography and everything matches up with those other leaked images from a couple of years ago, which is one thing that also lines up with this dude from 2015 who was an ex-Take-Two employee, at least according to this image that he put on Twitter, saying that he was fed up, he's looking for a career change, and it was then assumed that he was the person that put the leaks out in the first place. But even if you discard that, if you literally just go from the top-down topographical side of it, you do have a new map that is hyper-detailed that lines up with the one from 2018. And it does look pretty promising. There is a little bit more to legitimize this, but what do you think based on the images that you've hopefully seen?
I don't know, Scott Telford, right? Because I used to think I could find patterns in things, jumping on this leak bandwagon, whether it was GTA or Batman or whatever in the past. And I might have believed a bit too much in them. And just because I can see some kind of correlation or some kind of potential proof, like you said, this proof in inverted commas goes back to like 2015, which does sound promising. But at this point, man, I just don't know anymore. I just, like you said, I'm taking this entire thing with a big Tony Montana style, mound of salt and not the hard drug. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm snorting up all of this salt because I don't really believe it, man. Even though it does seem legit, like, I don't know.
Well,
one or two images is not enough for me to go off, so I need more convincing from you.
Well, so the two things that Arthur Bell's write-up on GTA Forums boils down to is the one thing is, like I said, it's the detail. It's the amount of detail that is in this. If it's a fan render, it's one hell of a fan render. They also compared it to the scale of GTA 5's map, where if you looked at that, top down, when Rockstar first put out the picture of the entirety of GTA 5's map, it's the same scale as what this new leaked image is. And so, Bell or whatever, Arthur Bell is saying, like, look, if Rockstar are still operating under the same scale, which why wouldn't they be? That's another thing that lines it up as being legitimate. It does also line up with the Project Americas leak from a few years ago, the idea that, we are revisiting Vice City, because one of the original dates that's on the leaked images from 2018 says 1985. The Project Americas leak said that we'd be doing this, like, drug empire building stuff across the 70s and the 80s, and then it would be sort of taking place in multiple locations. And with these new maps being a cluster of islands, one of which being this this huge island that has Miami on the side of it, obviously different to real life. It's like Rockstar's take on it does seem to be to sort of separate it, so you've got this island that has Miami on the side of it, or Vice City on the side of it, and then a cluster of other islands that you can sort of travel to. All that stuff seems to quote-unquote line up, and does make sense. I think if they were going to go back to Vice City, they would do something that is larger scale in this way, where you have multiple land masses to travel to, and they could, maybe have you doing missions in Liberty City or whatever. These are all things that were part of the Project Americas leak, that you would be traveling, doing sort of drug deals and whatever. You'd be traveling to different cities, going back and forth, building your empire that way. All that stuff makes sense to me, but obviously we're in full-on banana sandwich, huffing the puff territory, so I'm just whatever.
Totally, man. I like it. When it comes to the idea of like Vice City being included in somewhere, that's been a rumor since as long as I can remember, since I was but a bairn. There were rumors that Vice City was going to come back in some form. And I've always kind of championed that only if it's part of a larger whole. So this leak, should it be true, is appealing to me because you do get that kind of remastered, recreated, reimagined version of Vice City, but then you also get all of this new landmass that we potentially haven't seen before, this expanded, cityscape, these expanded towns, this expanded, the waterways going through the islands and stuff. Like the sheer scale of it and the variety in there, like that is promising to me, because one of the things I love about the GTA 5 map is that you do have that dense, city, but then you can go out to the wilderness up north, and you get like this sort of completely different play experience with this completely different environment and a lot of new activities, a lot of different characters, even like the police interceptors change. And I love that idea that you're really connecting a bunch of different locations, each with their own distinct identity and cultures or whatever, and you're traveling between them. Like the scale doesn't have to be, realistic. It doesn't have to be the biggest map ever, but that feeling of distinct areas, variety and stuff like that. That's what I love out of a GTA map, because it means it never really gets boring, and every single street more or less has its own individual stamp. Like I mention every single time we cover GTA 5 that I know those streets better than the streets that I grew up on. I know which routes to take, which which rights to take, which streets are going to get me a shortcut to the next place without having to use the map. And that comes from just how well they're designed. Like I think, I'm not the first to say that Rockstar designs these maps with the kind of geography in like the authenticity of the geography in mind first, and then the gameplay comes second. For me, that's always been a big win. So I want to see that kind of transplanted onto this new map, should it be real.
Well, my thing with the map size stuff, because I'm the total opposite for you. Like, for me, the maps that I know like the back of my hand are like Liberty City, Vice City, San Andreas. Like, I could sketch them out for you right now. Whereas GTA 4 and 5, more so 5, I thought was too complex. Like, I've always found that they skewed a little bit more towards realism than what I wanted. Whereas, like in the original 3D GTAs on PS2 and everything, I knew exactly where every stunt ramp was, where every shortcut was. Like, that like you said, that whole way of getting around. And maybe it is just sheer exposure to that map. Like, you need to just live in it for longer. Even though I put a hell of a lot of time into GTA 5. But I like the idea of them approaching. You have one massive city, one big island. That's sort of, even on if you take this top-down new image as true, then you do have this sort of horseshoe of a city like around the island, and then everything in the middle is more like jungle, like tundra and sort of dirt roads and things like that. Stuff that feels a bit more like Just Cause, like you're sort of having firefights amongst some sort of sweaty jungle or whatever as you sort of do drug deals and things like that. I like the idea of them shaking that stuff up. Obviously trying to memorize an entire forest would be pretty hard, but I hope like by minimizing the city amount overall, that maybe means that it would become more memorable. For me, there was a almost arcadey sensibility to the way that they designed the old maps that I found like played into, like I said, like stunt ramps left, right and center, and like sort of more overblown ways to like experiment with the vehicles. That I thought GTA 5's more, like I said, realistic, quote unquote realistic take on LA or whatever just didn't like click for me. But I don't know, I'm curious what the hell they do, because it's like at this point GTA 5 is still the biggest selling entertainment property in the world. GTA 5 has like sold more than ever or whatever, and it's like, well, where do they go from here? Like Dan Houser has left Rockstar, their lead creative writer, so it's like, do they sort of rein stuff in and do like a more focused thing? Was he the guy that wanted to do big overblown? Red Dead 2 was like this crazy over the top thing. Do they sort of bring it back in again, or do you just keep going bigger and bigger? Like for me, I would rather they brought it in and went a bit more old school and had a map that I can, like I said, memorize inside out, play into, like I said, the more overblown stuff, and then play into the variety that you get from jungle to city to, flying between different places and things like that.
It's going to be fascinating, man. Like, this is going to be such a turning point for the series, regardless of whether or not this map is true, in my opinion. Because like you said, it's been, how many years now? Every single time we do news, it feels like a different year. But I think it's been, 7 years?
Since GTA 5, yeah.
7 since GTA 5, and this game is nowhere near in sight. I think some of the previous rumors that we heard, like, only suggested that it's still in pre-production and not full production yet, which means it's going to be quite a ways off. But yeah, like you said, with the amount of personnel, key personnel, that have left Rockstar over the past few years, even over the past few months, like, this is going to be a very different Rockstar making the next game, and presumably with very different design principles. The success of GTA Online isn't going to go unnoticed, because that's what made GTA 5 like just this behemoth that refuses to go away, for better or worse. That's going to have a huge impact on how the next game is designed. Hopefully, with without Dan Houser, we still managed to retain that story-driven single-player focus that gets a lot of people into these games, and it's not entirely sacrificed for an online experience. But like, I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated to see when they're going to actually announce it. I'm fascinated to see how they're going to try and top GTA 5, because we've gone an entire generation, which is absolute madness. Without a Grand Theft Auto game, yeah, we had the remaster, and it only came a few months before the next-gen consoles, but it's crazy. It's so crazy, in fact, that something outside has started jackhammering away. Like, that's how crazy this news is.
That's the GTA rumors knocking on the door. It's like, talk about the fact that it could be real. I think, Rockstar in general, like, they did Red Dead Redemption 2 the entire generation. They bought more people as well. They just bought a Crackdown 2 studio to sort of become like Rockstar, and it was another location name. So they're really getting bigger, but it's like, so far right now they're putting all their resources into GTA Online, but assumedly alongside that they've been building this other thing. The Project America's leak said that GTA 6 has been in development since 2012, at least in regards to planning what they would do after GTA 5, and all this stuff seems to line up. But let us know what you think down in the comments below. Do you like the idea of returning to Vice City, and would you take on this sort of Narcos-infused drug empire building version of GTA? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time. Bye.